So we are speaking of human rights with a human rights violation which is occurring now. In the middle of a dinner, you have to hear a speech. A keynote speech has the risk that it can be longer. But I will try to make it short. My first measure is to give my appreciation for the presence of all of you and for your generosity. Without this group, it would be impossible to organize this meeting. We will spend 2 days in this fantastic place in which several selected groups have met before to deal with very sensitive matters of world peace or human rights. Independence of justice is, in this context, a crucial matter that has to do with these crucial values of human rights and democracy. So, we are with the best people and in the right place. Thank you for that again. This gathering of distinguished participants from several parts of the world wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the very generous and committed support from the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Since we signed in April, as Francisca has, as Andrea has recalled, MOU with Francisca Rinke, coordinator of the Rule of Law program at the Konrad Adenauer some months ago, a valuable process, very important valuable process opened. On that basis, I have had the opportunity to participate in very useful gatherings of judges and lawyers organized by the Foundation in Asia, Europe, Eastern Europe, and Latin America. In all of them, I was nourished by very valuable experiences, approaches, and information. In this process, the support of Francisca and of persons like Marie-Christine Puig, Director of the Program for Latin America, has been really important. Thanks to you all. During the last months, we received a very valuable cooperation from Andrea Osheimer, Executive Director of the Foundation's office in New York. While I was there in October last year to present my annual report at the General Assembly, we had a very valuable and important meetings with her, with William Wilson, here, chair of the Task Force of the Independence of Lawyers and Judges of the New York City Bar Association, and with Martin Flaherty of the Fordham Law School that will be with us tomorrow. It was in that meeting that the idea of organizing this gathering was designed. Thanks Martin and Willie for your ideas and enthusiasm, and of course thanks Andrea for all that you have done in these months. And I want to mention as well the dedication and fantastic job made by Monica Castillejos, without whose participation this meeting wouldn't be possible. Thank you again, Monica. We give again an applause because it did. Well, the independence of the judiciary is an essential component of democracy, as we all know perfectly. It has to do with the rights of all. It is not a prerogative or a privilege granted in the interest of the judges, but is justified by the need to enable them to fulfill their role as guardians of the rule of law and of human rights and fundamental freedoms. International standards provide that it is an obligation to respect and observe the independence of the judiciary and to adopt all appropriate measures to ensure that judges can decide matters before them impartially and without improper influences, pressures, or interferences. As such, the independence of the judiciary should be regarded by every citizen as a guarantee of truth, freedom, respect for human rights, and impartial justice free from external influences. However, unfortunately, attacks on judges, lawyers, and court officials are part of an uncountable situation in which separation of powers is replaced by power concentration, authoritarianism, and human rights violations. That kind of context and situations led the then Commission of Human Rights of the United Nations, now Human Rights Council, to establish in 1994 the mandate of the Special Rapporteur on the independence of judges and lawyers. I met Dato Param Kumaraswamy, the first Special Rapporteur on independence of judges in Lima in 1996, when he was in his first official visit to Latin America, visiting Peru, to examine the violations of independence of justice that were being committed by the government of Fujimori after his self-coup made in 1992. I didn't suspect that after 2 decades I was going to receive the responsibility of the rapporteurship by the United Nations. The international legal framework containing the principles of independence of judges and lawyers and supporting the mandate's goals is well established and very well known. It includes treaty laws such as Article 14 of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and its regional counterparts such as the European Convention for the Protection of Human Rights and Fundamental Freedoms, the American Convention of Human Rights, the African Charter on Human Rights and People's Rights, and the Arab Charter on Human Rights. The scope and requirements of an independent and impartial justice system have also been addressed in quite some detail and in a variety of situations in the jurisprudence of regional human rights courts, especially by the Inter-American Human Rights Court and the European Court of Human Rights. But the specific rules and global standards on independence of judges and lawyers were established in 1985 with the basic principles on the independence of the judiciary adopted by the General Assembly. This comprehensive set of international and regional rules and standards was complemented 5 years later with the basic principles on the role of lawyers and the guidelines on the role of prosecutors, adopted in 1990 by the 8th United Nations Congress on the Prevention of Crime and the Treatment of Offenders. The basic principles on the independence of the judiciary, from now on basic principles, lists the measures that the states are required to adopt to guarantee the independence of the judiciary at the national level. They require that independence of the judiciary be guaranteed by the state and enshrined in the Constitution or the law of the country, and reaffirm that it is the duty of all governmental and other institutions to respect and observe the independence of the judiciary. They also include specific provisions concerning the status of judges, including their independence and impartiality, qualification and appointment, conditions of service and remuneration, security of tenure, promotion, assignment of cases, disciplinary procedures against judges. Despite such a comprehensive legal framework and a valuable body of jurisprudence, the independence of judges, lawyers, and prosecutors is still extremely vulnerable. It's under attack, or it's merely non-existent in many parts of the world, and new challenges appear. That is why revisiting the basic principles with a view to recommend concrete ways to render such independence more effective seems timely. In order to do so, attention should be paid to the context and evolution in which independence has to be assured and preserved, and address the commitments or lack thereof of all the stakeholders, especially the states. The basic principles have been a fundamental conceptual framework and international standards on the subject. However, it is visible that at this point they need to be enriched and updated. They do not include, for instance, provisions devoted to judicial councils or a series of new threats and challenges to judicial independence, such as corruption or organized crime. As well, other important developments have taken place, such as the Bangalore Principles of 2001 on integrity and judicial conduct, which contains an approach that an updated version of the basic principles could include. Considering that accountability is the other side of the rights of judges to its independence and autonomy, the Bangalore Principles have identified 6 core values that should guide each judge's work and life. Including some of these values in the updated basic principles could be considered. In this very relevant matter, entities of the United Nations system should work in closer cooperation. In 2016, for instance, the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC in Vienna, launched a global program on promoting a culture of lawfulness, which includes the establishment of a global judicial integrity network to exchange best practices and lessons learned on priority challenges and emerging issues with regard to judicial integrity and the prevention of corruption. I, as Special Rapporteur that reports to the Human Rights Council in Geneva, have expressed my strong support to that initiative emerging from Vienna, and I'm acting now, as many other colleagues here in this meeting, as member of the Global Judicial Integrity Network, a platform to support judiciaries being coordinated not from Geneva but the UNODC in Vienna. The idea to update the basic principle is not to replace them with a new set of principles. This is a very important consideration to take in account from scratch. That could open an unpredictable path in which the actual set of basic principles could eventually be under risk. Besides the need to consider including the essence of the concepts of accountability contained in the Bangalore Principles, there are two matters that appear as some of what we can discuss in this meeting as matters to be part of an updated version of the basic principles. Some more can be presented in the following 2 days. One is corruption. Corruption has a direct impact on human rights. First, it deprives societies of significant resources that could be used to meet basic needs in public health, education, infrastructure, or security. Second, it has direct negative consequences for the functioning of state institutions in general and for those organs responsible for ensuring the rule of law and the administration of justice in particular. Being free from official corruption must be a fundamental obligation that governments owe to every individual. Corruption in a society and in the judiciary directly undermines the rule of law and the ability of the judiciary to guarantee the protection of rule of law and human rights. On the other, corruption can represent a very serious threat for judges, prosecutors, lawyers, and other actors fighting against it and directly or indirectly impede the proper discharge of their professional functions. Systematic corruption and organized crime enjoys impunity when judicial institutions are unable to perform their functions. Clear standards could be included so to face serious challenges and threats faced by judges, lawyers, prosecutors, and other legal professionals when confronting and combating corruption, and the safeguards that must be enforced to ensure their security and that they can carry out their duties independently. The United Nations Convention Against Corruption, the only universal instrument against corruption, represents a major milestone in the fight against corruption. It introduces a comprehensive set of standards, measures, and rules to strengthen the legal and regulatory regimes to fight corruption. The broad scope and the mandatory nature of the Convention makes it the only instrument capable of providing a comprehensive response to this global problem. It covers a number of fundamental and progressive issues and provides clear and concrete tools that make it possible for a number of states to advance in simultaneous and joint criminal investigations. The Convention identifies the judiciary as an institution that is critical in preventing and combating corruption. In particular, Article 11 provides that each state party should take measures to strengthen integrity and to prevent opportunities for corruption among members of the judiciary without prejudice to judicial independence. Such measures may be introduced and applied within the prosecution service in states where that institution does not form part of the judiciary but enjoys an independence similar to that of the judicial service. The other matter could be judicial councils. One of my 2 last year reports was on judicial councils, a matter not mentioned in the basic principles. Judicial councils play in several countries an essential role guaranteeing the independence and the autonomy of the judiciary. In that report, I mentioned that the number of judicial councils has increased greatly in recent decades. Current estimates suggest that more than 70% of the countries in the world have some form of judicial council or equivalent independent and autonomous body. The underlying rationale for their creation is the need to insulate the judiciary and the judicial career processes from external political pressure, mainly from the executive branch. In addition to the primary function of safeguarding judicial independence, a growing number of judicial councils have been entrusted with far-reaching powers to promote the efficiency and quality of justice and rationalize the administration of justice, court management, and budgeting. While the number of judicial councils have dramatically increased, 2 concerns arise. Firstly, that there is no explicit set of international rules defined in the United Nations on objectives and composition of judicial councils wherever they exist. Second, there is no ideal model of a national judicial council, nor can a comprehensive analysis of the effectiveness of each of these institutions be provided in the reports of the United Nations. To guarantee their independence from political power and ensure effective self-government for the judiciary, clear principles and rules are indispensable. While on its functions and composition there is no single model, there are, however, 2 essential criteria that could be considered. First, All the appointment processes of those who integrate the Council must be transparent and participatory in order to avoid and prevent corporatism and the appropriation of the process by groups or de facto powers. Second, it is appropriate that judicial councils include judges and non-judges among their members. To avoid the risk of corporatism, it is advisable that the councils includes non-judges as lawyers, law professors, and citizens of recognized reputation and experience. The basic principles on the independence of the judiciary do not include any provision specifically devoted to judicial councils. To end and to finish with this parenthesis of human rights violation, excuse me again, the idea to organize this meeting is and was to discuss all of these matters and others that may be directly connected to the way to produce an aggiornamento of the basic principles. Not, I insist, a new set of basic principles that renewals and modifications that can be feasible and viable. Considering updating the basic principles then for the addition of the special rapporteur is necessary and viable. And second, to explore the ways and means so to generate the institutional, political, and social requirement so to succeed in this endeavor is a thing that I hope we can do in this meeting as well. Thank you again very much for to participate in this gathering, for the generosity of giving your time, your experience with us, and this fantastic place, and thanks again to the cooperation from the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Thank you.